Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to uncover how a massive tactical revolution in the 1960s and 70s completely altered the structural foundation of European football. I mean, we're looking at a fascinating era where the pitch essentially became a giant chessboard, and two radically opposing philosophies clashed to define the modern game. If you love dissecting the foundations of elite performance, you are absolutely going to love this journey.
Here is our tactical briefing for today. We'll hit 1. The rise of Catenaccio. 2. Building the Celtic way. 3. Lisbon 1967, the clash. 4. The Dutch tactical shift. And finally, 5. The legacy of mobility. All right, Section 1, the rise of Catenaccio.
So, our story begins with the dominant system of the era. We're looking at a tactical thesis built purely on locking down the opposition and just grinding out results. What exactly is this lockdown strategy? Well, Catenaccio translates literally from Italian to the doorbolt or the chain. It was a highly organized system designed to absolutely nullify attacking threats at all costs. It actually had early roots in the Swiss Varus system from the 1930s, but it was refined in Italy to create an impenetrable defensive wall. Basically, it frustrated opponents, squeezed the space on the pitch, and prevented goal-scoring opportunities through sheer tactical discipline and patience.
There were a few key steps to making this machine tick. Manager Helenio Herrera engineered this perfectly for Inter Milan into a 5-3-2 formation. The absolute core innovation here was a free libero, or a sweeper, operating just behind the defensive line. Their job? Sweep up any loose balls that managed to get past the primary defenders. Combine that with strict, ruthless man-to-man marking across the entire pitch, and you've got an absolute defensive juggernaut. And once they won the ball back, the goal was to launch sudden, devastating counterattacks.
Now, what's really interesting is that the architect of this system, Helenio Herrera, insisted his Grande Inter side wasn't just about gritty attrition and boring defense. He actually said, "The problem is that most of the people who copied me wrongly. They forgot to include the attacking principles that my Catenaccio included." He utilized overlapping fullbacks, like the legendary Giacinto Facchetti, to spark fast, lethal counterattacks with very few touches. It was highly calculated, and honestly, it was incredibly successful.
Moving on to Section 2, building the Celtic way. You see, every dominant system eventually faces its antithesis. Enter manager Jock Stein and a sleeping giant known as Celtic in 1965. Stein looked at the rigid, cautious football of the time and decided to build something entirely different. He engineered a fluid system of total mobility based on 3 foundational pillars. First up, overwhelming attack, pushing fullbacks high up the pitch to create massive overloads. Second, the psychological hook, unifying fearless players with a passionate working-class fan base. And third, verticality, meaning ruthlessly fast forward passing. He completely redefined how his squad attacked the pitch, demanding that every single player be totally comfortable operating in multiple positions. Which brings us to Section 3, Lisbon 1967, the clash.
In the 1967 European Cup final, these two opposing architectures finally collided in a classic David versus Goliath scenario. This historic matchup was a sheer contrast of styles. On one side, you have Inter Milan, the undisputed masters of Catenaccio, utilizing that rigid 5-3-2 designed for attrition. On the other side, Celtic, armed with total mobility, a relentless attacking mindset, and a high press. It was literally Inter's rigid destruction of space matched up against Celtic's relentless creation of space. Inter stepped onto that pitch fully expecting a grueling, cautious battle where Celtic would eventually adopt to them. But Stein flat-out refused to compromise his attacking style for the biggest game in their club's history. Celtic just bombarded Inter from the very first whistle. And finally, by the 84th minute, that relentless pressure completely shattered the Italian chain. Stevie Chalmers poked home the winning goal in a 2-1 victory. Inter's legendary defensive structure was completely dismantled, crowning the immortal Lisbon Lions, and proving to the world that attacking football could, in fact, conquer Europe. Section 4, the Dutch tactical shift.
But the tactical arms race didn't just end there. A new generation of Dutch architects took Stein's blueprint and evolved it into the synthesis we now know as total football. Look at how rapidly this tactical landscape evolved. 1967 was Celtic's triumph over Inter, but fast forward to 1970 and Feyenoord defeats Celtic. In 1971, Ajax defeats Celtic, and by 1972, Ajax takes down Inter Milan. This rapid seismic shift really showcases how Dutch teams took over Europe, blending zonal marking and absolute fluidity to officially end the Catenaccio era.
A really crucial turning point in this timeline was Celtic's devastating extra-time loss to Feyenoord in the 1970 European Cup final. It was a massive sliding doors moment. Stein, riding high from a semi-final win over Leeds, perhaps underestimated the emerging Dutch threat. A late extra-time goal from Ove Kinval meant a 2-1 loss for Celtic. It was a disaster for the Scottish side, and actually triggered the eventual breakup of the Lisbon Lions as Stein was forced to transition his squad toward a new generation of younger players.
The balance of power had firmly moved to the Netherlands. By the 1971 quarterfinals, Celtic faced Ajax, and the Dutch mastery was on full display. Celtic legend Jimmy Johnstone later admitted, "I couldn't have seen Celtic beating Ajax at that time." Ajax, spearheaded by a young Johan Cruyff who was just completely running the show, outclassed the Scottish side 3-1 on aggregate. The fluid total football system where any outfield player could seamlessly take over the duties of an attacker, midfielder, or defender, well, it made traditional man-marking strategies totally obsolete.
And finally, Section 5, the legacy of mobility.
Let's look at the enduring blueprint of this tactical arms race and why this history matters so much to the football you watch today. Across decades of head-to-head battles spanning the European Cup, the Champions League, and the Europa League, Ajax and Celtic remained incredibly evenly matched. They really share a parallel track through the game's history. Both won their early European Cups with squads composed entirely of domestic players, representing two sides of the very same historic, fluid, attacking philosophy that changed the sport forever. Over their 10 historical competitive meetings, Ajax holds a very slight edge, scoring 17 goals to Celtic's 9. They edge the win column slightly too, with 5 wins to Celtic's 4, proving just how incredibly tight this rivalry of ideas really was over a span of 5 decades. It was an absolute education for both sides every single time they met.
The crucial point here is that Jock Stein's architectural pillars and the subsequent evolution by the Dutch didn't just disappear into the history books. High pressing, supreme fitness, overlapping fullbacks, and an absolute unity of purpose. These are the direct ancestors of the elite tactical systems dominating world football right now. The intense pressing games you see from the best teams in the world today, they're built on the very foundations laid by this exact tactical arms race.
So as you analyze the incredibly complex, highly commercialized, data-driven systems governing elite sports today, I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. Have we forgotten the essential structural foundation of community and identity necessary to build something truly immortal? Jock Stein proved that before you can raise the roof with silverware, you need a shared identity. Football is, at its heart, an architectural project. Keep questioning the blueprints behind the game, and thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.